Long time no see here on the Cubs baseball channel, but we're here. It's off season, starting to kind of get things ready for the campaign of what's going to happen with the Cubs. What are they going to do? What kind of moves are they going to make? And we'll talk about all that. But today I want to talk about prospects and the Cubs with 8 prospects in the top 100, according to MLB's Pipeline. So let's get into those guys. Not going to surprise you with the names that are there, but where do they slot in with the Cubs and what do they bring to the table? Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Let's get this thing started right now. Let's talk a little Cubs baseball, off-season action. What do you say, everybody? And thank you for hanging out with us on the Cubs Baseball Channel. I'm Mick Gillispie at Broadcaster Mick and Cubs Baseball Channel on a lot of different platforms now. And you can join us on X, on Instagram, and on TikTok. So please do that. And thank you for being here today. All right, we're going to talk prospects today and the fact that the Cubs have 8 prospects in the top 100. Now, most of these guys are AAA prospects, which means that they're one league away from the major leagues. And we've talked about the roster management. Some people have criticized the front office for not managing the roster with opportunities for these guys, but that's going to be for the front office. One of the things they're going to have to do between now and the start of the season and then next year is figure out how they can take advantage of this equity, which is these prospects that they need to get to the big leagues and try to make something happen. So of the guys, the top prospect that the Cubs have, according to MLB Pipeline, and it's pretty close, but a little bit more, 10 spots higher than number 2 on the list, and that's the 22nd best prospect, Matt Shaw. So I wanted to talk about Matt Shaw and tell you that Shaw, who was the Cubs' first-round pick a couple of years ago, still only 22 years old, 5'9", 185, and I'm expecting that the 2023 first-round pick, 13th overall out of Maryland, gets to the major leagues sooner than later. Last year, I saw a lot of this guy, and he really won me over. You know, defensively, he's pretty good defensively. I wouldn't say he's a Gold Glove winner, but he's good enough to get by. But his bat really plays, and when you look at the statistics that he put up between Double and Triple-A, he hit 284. And he had a 379 on base percentage. He also ended up with 21 home runs and 71 runs batted in, but he walked 62 times and he only struck out 95. He struggled because they pushed these guys up so fast, straight from Maryland. And by the end of the season, he was with the Double-A Smokies, which is kind of becoming a lot more common. I think part of that is college baseball is a lot more competitive now than it used to be. But then on top of that, it's a philosophy where I don't think that they value, and not just the Cubs, but in general baseball, the developing part of it. They just want to get you to the big leagues as soon as possible. And what I really liked about Shaw, he struggled. He struggled playing every day, banged up and nicked. You know, in college, you have days off, and pro ball, you don't really. I mean, everybody has Monday off, but you're playing 6 days a week. And what he did was he was just very patient at the plate. He drew his walks, and when he was struggling, and then all of a sudden he just started to get more comfortable with playing every day, learning to have intensity every single game, not just for the big weekend series. And he proved that he can hit. And he's an exciting player for the Cubs. The power's there. He's a clutch performer. He's not bad at shortstop. He can play that position. I don't know if he's an everyday shortstop just because some of the guys that play short at the big league level are so good, but he can spell you out there. He can play second. He can also play third. So he's an infielder with some flexibility, but he's also got some power, and we'll see what he does. I think that he's in Triple-A right now. I think he's going to be a player that the Cubs are going to have to put in the big leagues next year at some point. So maybe you use him for one of the roster spots I know that they'll say, well, we got to develop, but the way that the Cubs bench looked last year, wasted opportunities for a guy like this to just be around the big leagues, to get some at bats, maybe pinch hitting, maybe playing some games. I think the biggest jump right now, and it's not even close anymore, is going from the minor leagues to the big leagues. And it is enormous. It took Pete Crow Armstrong like a year before he was really able to start playing like the Hollywood Pete that we saw. So Matt Shaw, the Cubs' top prospect, according to MLB Pipeline. Now, here's the second guy that I want to talk about is the 34th prospect. And this is a guy that I really love, and that's outfielder Owen Caissie. Not that I don't really love Matt Shaw, but I'll tell you, Caissie's got just some intangibles that I think could play for a long time at the major league level. He's a right fielder. He's got a very strong arm. He's sneaky good defensively. I think he's better than Seiya Suzuki in right field. I think he takes better angles. I think he'll be a big upgrade defensively. And then from the left side, the guy has just really enormous power. He's also a very young player. You know, you're talking about only 22 years old, big guy, 6'3", 190. He was a second-round pick in 2020, a high school player out of Canada to the Padres, and then he came over in the Yu Darvish trade. And the Cubs got him because he was so young. And what happens on a deal like this, and I can remember talking to Jed Hoyer about it, a few years ago before Caissie was anywhere close to Double-A. And at that time, when GMs were making trades, hey, we'll give you one of our top prospects and somebody we really like, but we're going to give you somebody that's very young because they just didn't want to have like, oh, well, next year, here's a guy you traded. At least now, I mean, the Padres are in the playoffs. Yu Darvish has had a good season. I don't think Padre fans are going to be, and the front office are going to be as disappointed in the fact that they gave this guy away if they would have done it and he would have made an impact at the major league level. But he's gone up through the system steady. 22, he was with South Bend, put up good numbers. 23, he was in Double-A Tennessee, had a great season. And then in Iowa last year, as a young player, did really well. Hit 278, played 127 games there, had a 375 on base percentage, hit 19 home runs, 75 runs batted in. But another guy that gets on base, he walks 71 times. Now, the thing that I'm sure that the scouts and, the Cubs, I'm sure, are worried about is just the strikeouts. He does strike out a lot. He struck out 156 times. And for power guys, and I think that eventually he's going to be a big power guy, the way that the ball jumps off this guy's barrel is tremendous. So I think eventually he's going to be a big power guy, but I'm sure that when you strike out that much, and there's definitely some learning to go with, really any kind of soft middle end to him, and for lefties, you get a lot of that from the right-handers, right? Because his ball's coming into you. Well, and I'm sure he's working on adjusting there. But all in all, the guy's clutch. He's a really good player, and I think that he has the potential to be a long-time major league right fielder and someone that the Cubs can depend on for years. Number 42 is a guy that had a disappointing year because of an injury, and that's right-hander Cade Horton. I really thought that Horton was going to break loose this season and that Horton was going to get to the big leagues and contribute. But the former first-round pick for the Cubs in 2022 dealt with some injuries. Great fastball, excellent curveball, amazing slider, working on the changeup, but just has the it factor going. 6'1", 210 pounds. He's 23 years old. I thought that he would be in the big leagues by now. He was a two-way player in college, right? He was a quarterback and could also pitch at Oklahoma. I'll give you an idea how good this guy was. Dealt with Tommy John surgery, and then had the injury this year and was kind of dealing with that. And we thought, well, maybe he'd come back before the season was over, and they shut him down. So he ended up in Iowa, and Tennessee at the very beginning of the year, but and only threw 9 games starts and was 2-1 with a 4.46 ERA. So this is a player that the Cubs really need to get back on track. He was out with a subscapular strain, some kind of back deal, and you just hope that he returns sometime soon. But I tell you what, when he's healthy and he's doing his thing, I mean, this guy's got the Kerry Wood, Mark Pryor look to him, and is certainly a prospect that the Cubs are hoping is battling for a spot in the rotation next year. Number 44. So this is the last top 50 prospect for the Cubs, and an interesting guy, and Moises Ballesteros. Ballesteros to me is interesting because he's only 20 years old, but he's 5'7" and 195 pounds. So he's not a big guy, but he can hit. He's a catcher and a first baseman, has excellent hands, able to put the ball in play. He's out of Venezuela, really smart player. Just trying to get him defensively good enough to catch, to contend for a spot in the major leagues. And I think one of the issues that I saw with him was that he just didn't catch enough. He was used at first base and DH, and it's because he can hit. But then all of a sudden, he just kept hitting, and they're like, well, we got to get this guy ready to catch. He caught a lot more last year than he had in the past, and double and triple A combined, he ended up hitting 289 and had a 354 on base percentage, and he found some power. His best power year was last season in the minors, 19 home runs, 78 batted in, doesn't strike out too much. I mean, it was under 100, but he walked 45 times. He's just got that really good hand-eye coordination that plays in the big leagues. So being more consistent defensively is something that the Cubs need to get from him. And I feel like development for him is just get behind that plate and play as much as he can. And, the running game is such a big part of baseball now. You're only allowed to throw to first base twice. And you got the bigger bags. There's a lot more action on the bases. And you wonder, for him, he's still trying to figure out how to block the ball, how to frame and do all this other stuff. And that's what the minor leagues are for. His bat, I think you can put him in the big leagues and he'd hit now, but it's being able to catch if you put him behind the plate at the big league level. But really, really good hitter and another interesting prospect. And all those guys, Shaw, Caissie, Horton, and Ballesteros, are all in AAA. So they're one step away from the big leagues. And it surprised me that the Cubs did this, where they jammed all those guys in the AAA and didn't stagger them out a little bit. But I guess it just kind of, looks like, well, maybe they feel like this upcoming year is the year that we're going to see these guys finally really dip into this farm system and make a difference on the major league roster. Now, the issue is just there's a lot of guys that are signed for next year and years beyond. Where do you make those moves at? So there could be some trades in the offseason if they feel comfortable with some of these guys, or maybe they trade some of these prospects for pitchers. Who knows? But of the group, you got one pitcher and he was hurt last year. All right, so here's the back end of this prospect group. I'm going to start with James Triantos. I like James Triantos a lot. I think he is really fun player, infielder, mostly a second baseman, can play a little bit of outfield. I'm sure that the Cubs would really like to see him do that. Last year, between AA Tennessee and AAA Iowa, he hit 300, which is always nice. And I don't know why a hit or two more makes your average look so much better. But you talk about hand-eye coordination. I mean, this guy just makes contact. He only struck out 47 times last year. And 443 at bats. I mean, how impressive is that? Not too much power. It's 7 home runs, have 52 knocked in. More of, I would say, like your prototypical number 2 hitter, or gets on base with the hits, but he doesn't walk a lot. I mean, only 27 walks last year. So I'm sure that that's probably an area where the Cubs would really like to see him do well. But a former second round pick, and I say, do better just to get on base, maybe get some more walks and raise that on base percentage. But the bat to ball skills here are really special for a 21-year-old right-handed batter. 5'11", 195, was a second-round pick, 56 overall in 2021. And the like I said, the bat-to-ball skills are really fun to watch, and the hits are there. I would say for him, if it was me, I'd say, hey, let's figure out a way to just to get on base a little bit more. And I think that's why Shaw, you got two guys that pretty much do the same thing. Shaw's got more power, but the walks are, to me, the thing that separates him. I would say Triantos is a little better defensively than Shaw at second base, but then I see Shaw with the home runs and also with the walks, and that the eye, that's a big skill to have in the big leagues. But Triantos gets a ton of hits, and I don't care what people say. Hit isn't as good as a walk to me. A hit's better than a walk. You can do more with a ball and play hit than you can with a walk, but you want men on base. Number 67 is Kevin Alcantara. Saw him in the big leagues. He's an outfielder. This is a player who I'm still wondering about just a little bit about maturity. Big guy, though, 6'6", 188. He came over in the trade from the Yankees for Anthony Rizzo. That is, for a 22-year-old to see him in the big leagues, pretty impressive. He's got just a really innate ability to hit the ball for a big guy. And even though he's got the long arms, he always reminded me of the Dave Winfield type of guy, the old Yankee and Blue Jay and Padre and other teams, but just the long arms. He can hit the inside pitch, and inside out's the ball the other way. I'm expecting that eventually he's going to have more power. He hit 278 last year, had a 353 on base percentage between double and triple A. Ended up with 14 home runs and 61 batted in, struck out 123 times. Like I said, I just feel like this guy, that the track for him was going a little faster than I probably would have moved him, but he did get to the big leagues, which was a surprise to me, and he held his own, which isn't a surprise to me because the guy can really play. There's a logjam for outfielders right now between big league Cubs and minor league Cubs, and so you got him, and you got Caissie, who we just talked about. You got Canario. You got the guys that are signed in the big leagues. And so what are they going to do? I don't know what the answer to that is. Now, number 73 is last year's first-round pick, Cam Smith. Smith was at Florida State. And what's funny is that Smith was only a sophomore, but he was a draft-eligible sophomore. So a 21-year-old at 6'3", 225. This guy's got a lot of natural power. He held his own in Double-A last year, straight out of Florida State. It's going to be interesting to see kind of what he looks like when he has a full season of minor league baseball, professional baseball under his belt. But he hit 313 between the three teams that he played with. Really fast, 4 triples for him in his games, and 7 home runs and 24 knocked in. He's an exciting player. There's a certain electricity to him. He's a good defender, not a great defender, but a good defender at third. Has a strong arm, and someone that the Cubs are excited about. And also, I mean, for them, I think the scouting department's done a really good job with these first and second round picks. And you got to nail these. These are the ones that you pay. These are the ones that you expect to see in the big leagues. And here's another first round pick from this year that's, knocking on the door. I mean, you get to Double-A, and then, who knows how long it's going to take you to get there. And then Jefferson, Rojas, I don't know, Jefferson Rojas. I don't know a lot about Rojas. He's a kind of a shortstop, a 19-year-old in the low minor leagues. 5'11", 150. Cubs paid him $1 million. It's a pretty high bonus for the 2022 international class, but he's a pretty good hitter from what everyone says. He's got, this just a really smooth, slick runner, but hit 245 in South Bend this year. At times looked overmatched as a young player, but hit 6 home runs and had 47 knocked in. And I think that this will be a year. I mean, when you're listed at 150, who knows where he really is, but got to put some more meat on those bones. And at 19 years old, top 100 prospect, obviously he's a guy to keep an eye on. So that's your Cubs prospect list. Guys, I want to tell you that we appreciate the Tennessee Smokies for helping present this channel in the offseason. Boom, there they are. And they're not going to be the Tennessee Smokies forever because they're moving to a new stadium in Knoxville. But check out their team store right now. There's a lot of stuff that they have in that team store that's going to change. So if you want the new Knoxville gear, that's coming. But if you want some of the OG Tennessee stuff, you better get it now before it's gone. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Mick Gillispie. Like and subscribe. Get in the comments section. Was there a prospect that you expected to be in this list that you didn't see? I want to hear that. Or maybe you saw some of these guys. What do you think? Who do you think the top prospect list? I think this is a pretty good list. It's hard for me to really argue. Shaw certainly, after the power numbers and the walks, put himself clearly to me as the Cubs' top prospect. And then, Horton's got to get healthy. You do get penalized for not playing, for not being healthy. Owen Caissie's got to put the bat on the ball more, but when the ball hits the barrel of his bat, special things happen. Still, of those 8 guys, there's some really good players in that mix. We'll talk to you again soon, and thanks for hanging out with us. Go Cubs.